The plot of this episode is kind of like that movie Crimson Tide, only instead of a battle of wills between Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, we get a battle of wills between Harry Kim and a missile living inside of a hologram. Also, I'm pretty sure Quentin Tarantino didn't do an uncredited rewrite to this one. Yeah, those are the main differences. This is a review of the Star Trek Voyager episode Warhead. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know how Tom and B'Elanna's anniversary dinner went, don't worry, nobody else cares about that either, but also be warned, spoilers beyond this point. And now it's time for yet another episode of Star Trek's longest-running series, Why You Should Always Ignore Distress Calls. It's the night shift on Voyager. Tom Paris is in the mess hall, bugging Neelix to help him out with that anniversary dinner for B'Elanna that never gets mentioned again, and Harry Kim walks in and orders himself up a pot of coffee because he's in command tonight. Tom's like, "Hey, good luck, Captain Kim, you ambitious young upstart." Harry's like, "We've been on this ship 5 years. I'm like 30, but thanks." Harry's night shift on the bridge goes smoothly until, hey, look at that, they pick up a distress call from a nearby planet. Harry makes the command decision to alter course to go check it out. Then he makes the command decision to go wake up Chakotay and let him handle it from here on out. But Chakotay isn't letting Harry off the hook for interrupting his sleep so easily, and he puts Harry in charge of the away team to beam down to the planet to check out that distress call. The away team consists of Harry, the doctor, and some random security guard. Tuvok was like, "You handle this one, whatever your name is. I'm going back to bed." They beam down and discover that the distress call is coming from this thing, an object embedded in some rock. It looks like it might be a probe or a missile or something. Whatever it is, it's intelligent. The doctor can communicate with it. The object is confused. Its memory was damaged in the crash, and it doesn't know what it is or where it is. The doctor convinces Harry to convince Captain Janeway, who has also been woken up by this point, to allow them to bring the object aboard Voyager so they can help it. The object is beamed to main engineering and kept behind a force field as a precaution while Harry and B'Elanna work on it. Well, that should take care of any danger it might pose to the crew. Putting the strange alien object behind a force field always works. The object tells the doctor that it remembers traveling with a companion before crashing. Janeway and Seven scan the rest of the planet and discover a crater, a big one, with a radius of 200 kilometers, and radioactive to boot, obviously the result of the explosion of a massive weapon. Now they know what the object is. It's a missile. A warhead, if you will. Not exactly a mystery, was it, given, pretty much everybody on the crew agrees they need to get this artificially intelligent warhead off the ship as soon as possible. But the doctor argues passionately in its defense, insisting that it's a being in distress. As a physician and a fellow artificial life form, the doctor demands that they help the damaged warhead rather than destroying it or abandoning it back on the planet. Janeway agrees with the doctor, and they move the warhead to sickbay. The plan is to try and transfer the warhead's artificial intelligence into a holographic body like the doctor's, so they can talk to it and hopefully convince it to help them disarm its weapon systems. But the warhead has a bit of a freak out when B'Elanna tries to deactivate it in sickbay and arms itself. B'Elanna manages to shut the warhead down with an electromagnetic pulse, but not before the warhead transfers its artificial intelligence into the doctor. Now being controlled by the warhead, the doctor immediately isolates sickbay, trapping Harry and B'Elanna there with it. Dr. Warhead demands to be allowed to complete his original mission, which he now partially remembers. It turns out he was launched by his people against a hostile enemy, a dangerous species that poses a grave threat. Threatening to just detonate himself right here, right now, if he doesn't get what he wants, Dr. Warhead persuades Captain Janeway to alter Voyager's course to take him to his intended target. But while Janeway agrees to his terms, seeing no other choice at the moment, she and the rest of the crew also begin working on a plan to neutralize the warhead. Their first attempt is to contact a merchant who Neelix recently dealt with. This merchant was selling goods that used technology similar to what they found in the warhead, so they figure he might have some advice. He rendezvous with Voyager and beams aboard and offers to take the warhead off their hands. He has a special transporter that can beam that warhead away no problem. But Janeway has a problem. She doesn't want to let this interstellar salesman type have the Warhead because she's worried he'll just turn around and sell it to someone else who will use it to kill a whole bunch of people. They haggle. They can't come to an agreement, so the salesman returns to his ship and immediately attacks Voyager. The salesman tries to beam the Warhead away, but Dr. Warhead is like, I don't think so, and sends some kind of a pulse back through the transporter beam that destroys the salesman's ship. Hey, he fucked around and he found out. Janeway calls a meeting of the senior officers, and they come up with another plan to defeat Dr. Warhead. They'll fake a series of hits from an enemy minefield as a distraction, then 7 of 9 will go to sickbay with simulated injuries, and while Tuvok temporarily disables the Doctor's holo program, 7 will zap the Warhead with some of her trusty plot-powered Borg nanoprobes, which will deactivate it. They get started putting the plan into action, while unbeknownst to them, but beknownst to us, a whole fleet of other warheads detects Voyager and moves to intercept. Harry tries to convince Dr. Warhead to forget this whole thing by appealing to his sense of empathy. Dr. Warhead may be programmed as a weapon of mass destruction, but he's also a sentient being. Doesn't he realize that all he knows about the enemies he's attacking is shallow propaganda? Harry says, look at the holographic body you're in right now. It belongs to our doctor. He's an artificial being like you, and like you, he was programmed to fill a particular role, to do certain things, but he's intelligent. He has the ability to choose, and he's grown beyond his original programming. He's learned new skills. He's made friends. He sings. We wish he wouldn't, but he does. Dr. Warhead turns to Harry and says, yes, but amidst all his change and growth, did your doctor ever stop being a doctor? Harry's like, no. Dr. Warhead says, right. And I can't stop being a weapon. Oh, shit! Checkmate! Dr. Warhead says that his target is a military installation, but Harry pushes him, asks him, do these terrible enemies you're attacking have schools for their children? Does their planet have forests and wildlife? What do you even know about the people you're going to kill? For a moment, it seems like Harry might get through to Dr. Warhead when he says, that military installation you're going to destroy is manned by soldiers, living beings who will suffer and die because of you. Remember how you felt when you were trapped, alone and suffering on that planet where we found you? Do you really want to do that to someone else? But ultimately, Dr. Warhead shakes it off and says, my mission is to protect my people. Later, Dr. Warhead enlists Harry and B'Elanna's help in restoring his damaged memory. As they work, Harry and B'Elanna recover files that suggest that the Warhead's original orders had been countermanded, that he's no longer supposed to destroy his target. After looking through more of his restored memory files, Dr. Warhead discovers that the war between his people and their enemy is over. It ended 3 years ago, while he was stuck on that planet. Harry's like, great, the war's over. You don't have to blow yourself up and kill a bunch of people. But Dr. Warhead says, no, this is just a trick by the enemy. These memory files have been damaged. They could have been tampered with. Until I get a confirmation code from my control center, I'm carrying out my mission. Luckily, the rest of the crew are ready to carry out their plan, and it's guaranteed to work. They even woke up Tuvok and shoved him into an access tube so he can disrupt the doctor's hologram at the right moment. Paris starts jerking the steering wheel to simulate the ship being hit by mines. Neelix paints a nasty-looking wound on Seven's face, and they come staggering up to the door and asking to be let into sickbay. Dr. Warhead lets them in after Janeway convinces him that Seven is essential personnel, and without her, they'll never reach his target. Tuvok disrupts the Doctor's holo program, and Seven injects her nanoprobes into the Warhead, but an automatic defense system activates, and Seven is severely shocked. Dr. Warhead contacts Janeway on the bridge and says, nice try, but your attempt to disable me failed. Now I'm done fucking around with you meatbags. Everybody off the ship, now! Janeway's like, no, we're not doing that. Dr. Warhead says, then I'll detonate and kill you all. Janeway says, so go ahead. Detonate yourself now. Kill us, and you won't kill anyone else. Go ahead, big shot. Detonate. Do it, you fucking pussy. Do it! That fleet of other warheads shows up. Dr. Warhead is like, they detected my presence aboard this ship. They've come to get me, to take me with them to the target. See? I was right. Our orders haven't been rescinded. But Harry has seen the memory files rescinding the order, and he doesn't believe they were an enemy trick. He appeals once again to Dr. Warhead, urging him to check his memory files again for the confirmation code. So Dr. Warhead does, and he finds it. There's the confirmation code, a code that would be virtually impossible to forge. It's official. The war is over. The Warhead's mission has been canceled. Dr. Warhead still resists. I have a duty to protect my people, he says. Harry tells him, your people programmed you with intelligence for a reason. You're not just meant to blindly follow orders. You're meant to make your own decisions based on the circumstances you encounter out in the field. So make the right decision now. Think about what you've experienced these last few hours, living in the doctor's body, learning what it's like to be one of us. Now try to imagine the suffering you'll cause to people just like us if you reach your target. Dr. Warhead finally gets it. He realizes he can't complete his mission. But there's still the problem of the rest of that fleet of warheads out there. Dr. Warhead transmits his orders to stand down to the other warheads, but it's too late. They received those orders too, but they were already too close to the target to turn back. Once they get within a certain distance of the target, nothing can divert them, not even a direct order from their command center. So Dr. Warhead makes his final decision. He tells Harry to return his artificial intelligence to the body of the warhead and beam him out to the fleet, so he can detonate himself there and destroy them all, preventing them from attacking the target. Harry agrees. Dr. Warhead leaves the doctor's body and returns to the warhead. The warhead is beamed out into space and flies away with the rest of the fleet, and once they're a safe distance from Voyager, the warhead detonates, destroying itself and all the other warheads. Later, the next day or something, Harry pops back into sickbay to visit a recovering 7 of 9 and to see how the doctor is doing after everything. The doctor's feeling a little guilty about his role in bringing the warhead aboard the ship, but Harry's like, Doc, without you, I never would have gotten through to the warhead. I used you as the example of how an artificial intelligence can transcend its programming. The doctor's like, well, if you're giving me full credit for saving the day, I'll take it. Harry heads out. He's taking command for the night shift again. The doctor says, Voyager could do worse. And they share a moment of friendship and respect, and that's the, no, that's not the end. There's this scene with Harry bantering with the ensign who flies the ship on the night shift, and Harry says, hey, no more distress calls from now on, okay? And that's the end. You know what? I like this episode. It's a little clunky. It's a little padded. It feels like its script was hammered together from bits and pieces of various drafts, but in the end, it's a pretty good episode. When you push aside the various extraneous elements and get to the core of it, this is another story about the inescapable absurdity of war. Star Trek has done a lot of those, and this one manages to find another angle from which to tell that story so that it doesn't feel like a retread. That's especially impressive given that this is Voyager, a show made by people who were always willing and eager to slop out a carbon copy of an old TNG episode. There are pieces here reminiscent of episodes from previous Trek series, an artificial intelligence taking over a member of the crew, a powerful computer with damaged memory files that have distorted its sense of mission, a weapon designed to fight in a since-ended war that can't turn itself off. But those pieces combine into a whole that feels original and unique, or at least original and unique enough. I'm struck by how many of the episodes in this batch of reviews of episodes that feature threatening forms of AI have been anti-war stories. The concepts of artificial intelligence and war have been connected in fiction for a long time now. How many stories are there where the machines take over and the first thing they do is start a war to destroy the humans? But when Star Trek does it, it's not always that obvious. In this episode, and the last episode I reviewed, Voyager's Prototype, and even going back to classic Trek's The Ultimate Computer, which takes place during a war games exercise, it's not so much that the artificial intelligences involved immediately conclude that humanity has to be destroyed. It's that the creation of the AIs and the waging of war are connected through the unintended consequences they bring about. So much about the horror of war is tied to unintended consequences. The propaganda version always tells us that the enemy is dangerous and needs to be destroyed, and that our brave and righteous troops are protecting us by removing the enemy's ability to threaten us. They usually leave out, or try to downplay, the bits about collateral damage. How often the bombing of a military target also results in the devastation of the surrounding area, or the damaging of infrastructure, which the civilian population depends on. In war, it's never just the enemy's military that suffers. And as Harry points out to Dr. Warhead in this episode, the enemy's military are people too. Waging war using intelligent machines that can be precisely targeted and have the ability to make adjustments as needed but will also follow their orders no matter what seems like a good idea. But what happens when the war ends and those intelligent machines can't or won't be called back? There's also the obvious parallel, which this episode illuminates very well, between these fictional intelligent machines and the intelligent machines we use to fight our wars in real life. The intelligent machines we call soldiers. What should a soldier do when they realize they've been ordered to commit an atrocity? That's the situation Dr. Warhead finds himself in during this episode. He's sentient. He knows what it means to think, to feel, to be afraid. He knows what it means to suffer. But he's also been programmed to protect his people. Programming that runs so deep it even pushes him to rationalize continuing his mission even after he learns he's been ordered to abandon the attack. Sure, he has orders to break off, but what if they're an enemy lie? What about his duty to protect his people? The answer to that question is found through our shared humanity, through our empathy for one another. That's always been Star Trek's answer. It's a little simplistic, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. People, even people we don't like, even people who live in nations with competing interests to those of our own, deserve to live in peace. And people have the power to choose, to defy their orders, to exceed their programming. Which is not to say the route our heroes take to get to that answer hasn't changed over the years. In classic Trek, Captain Kirk's go-to move was to try and kill the computer with logic, force it to confront a contradiction it had committed, and destroy itself to fulfill its programming. Here, in this episode, Harry does something completely different. He appeals to the Warhead's empathy. He doesn't try to use the Warhead's own programming against it. He says, "You're more than your programming. You're a person. And you've been told to kill other people for no good reason, and you know that's wrong. So why do it?" And Harry's appeal works. The Warhead not only abandons its mission, it sacrifices itself to stop the other warheads from hitting their target. Embracing its empathy transforms the Warhead from a villain into a hero, from a bomb to an instrument of salvation. Empathy is a power greater than any weapon of destruction ever conceived. But we have to use it. That's a powerful message, and the episode does a good job of delivering it. There's also a smaller but no less important theme found in the scene with the merchant who comes aboard to try and take away the Warhead. At first, I thought this scene was mere padding because it doesn't really go anywhere other than ultimately giving the Warhead someone to kill along the way to prove how serious it is. But after I reflected on it for a bit, I realized there was maybe more going on with this scene than I saw at first. The merchant wants the Warhead. Janeway refuses to give it to him because she doesn't want him selling it to someone else. The merchant swears that he's not going to sell it. He's going to basically part it out, disassemble it, and sell its individual components to people who will use it for non-war-related purposes. Janeway is not satisfied and ultimately tells him to take a hike. There are a couple of things I like about this scene just for its own sake. First, it's nice to see our heroes standing firm on principle. The crew of Voyager, especially Janeway, didn't always do that. Not that I blame them. They were just written badly. Second, and most importantly, this scene illustrates how threatening weapons of mass destruction are merely by existing. Even if they aren't being used at the moment, the fact that they've been made at all creates the possibility that they will somehow, someday, fall into the hands of someone who will use them. There will always be those who want them and those who want to profit from the transaction. Such weapons are self-proliferating, which is one of the most dangerous things about them. Other good stuff in the episode, Robert Picardo is excellent as Dr. Warhead. He plays the character as a change in personality, not in overall affect, which I appreciate. He doesn't do a voice or an accent or distort his face. He's still basically the same as he always is when he's the Doctor, but he's also clearly different. He does bellow, "I must complete my mission," a few too many times, but other than that, it's a really solid job. As Dr. Warhead's primary scene partner, Garrett Wang puts in some good work as well. Harry's attempts to appeal to the Warhead's sense of empathy aren't just morally or philosophically correct, they're impassioned. They're the words of someone who actually cares about the principles he's espousing. Again, this is something we get far too little of during Voyager's run. Too often the characters play as though they're just going through the motions, or their dialogue consists of more meaningless technobabble than it does of recognizable emotional language. This time, Garrett Wang gets to actually play Harry as a person, not merely a type or a plot device, and he nails it. So yeah, I like this episode. There's a lot about it that I appreciate. There's a lot about it that works. There are also some things that don't work so well, mainly everything not involving Dr. Warhead and Harry and B'Elanna. Once the crisis begins and Dr. Warhead takes over, the episode splits pretty cleanly into the sickbay-based scenes, which are mostly good, and the scenes with the rest of the crew, which are just all over the place. While I like the scene with the salesman, for the reasons I discussed earlier, the way they find the salesman and bring him aboard the ship only serves to undermine the gravity of the overall situation. The idea is that Dr. Warhead has basically commandeered Voyager and is forcing Janeway to fly him to his target, or else he'll blow himself up and kill everybody on board. And he's monitoring everything that's going on from sickbay. And yet, it's seemingly no problem at all for Neelix to call up the salesman, for the salesman to fly his ship up alongside Voyager, beam aboard Voyager, and conduct a negotiation to possibly get rid of the Warhead, all without Dr. Warhead even knowing what's happening. Like, if it's that easy to pull the wool over Dr. Warhead's eyes, what's even the problem here? Couldn't they just send him fake sensor images in sickbay to trick him into thinking they've arrived at the target? Then send him out to blow himself up in open space? Also, the predicament of the crew is supposed to be a hostage situation, but it's a little difficult to take that seriously when people are able to come and go and conspire against the hostage taker with as little effort as we see displayed here. I also wish that the writers had found a way to start building the connection between Harry and Dr. Warhead sooner. Harry and Dr. Warhead wind up forming the heart of the episode, but the first character to form a connection with the Warhead is the Doctor himself. He's the one who realizes it's intelligent and begins communicating with it. But then, once the Warhead takes control of the Doctor's body, that relationship disappears, and Harry just kinda steps in and takes over. Eventually it works, but it's a bumpy road to get there. It might have been better had they somehow established a connection between Harry and the AI in the Warhead right away, instead of starting with the Doctor and the Warhead and then having to hand it off. Or alternatively, found a way forward for the Warhead other than taking control of the Doctor, so that the Doctor could have remained a separate person, and instead of Harry and Dr. Warhead being the heart of the show, it would have been the Doctor and the Warhead filling that role. I don't know. Like I said before, what they have is just a little clunky. Also clunky is the way much of the rest of the cast is handled. Everybody in the main cast at least gets something to do, so that's good, but most of them are just kinda abruptly yanked in as needed by the plot. Paris is the star of the first scene with Neelix, then disappears for most of the rest of the episode. 7 of 9 does a whole lot of nothing until stepping up to propose using her nanoprobes to disable the Warhead. Tuvok is totally absent until he shows up on the bridge more than halfway through and then finds himself in that maintenance shaft as part of the plan to disrupt Dr. Warhead's hologram. It feels like the writers included the supporting characters by assigning them tasks, rather than finding meaningful ways to fold them into the story. And I do really wish they'd ended the episode with that scene between Harry and the Doctor in sickbay. It's a good scene. It ends on a strong note with Harry heading out to take command during the night shift again, and the doctor paying him a compliment, telling him that Voyager could do a lot worse than to have him in charge. That's a really nice button for the end of the episode. And then it just kind of keeps going. And we get an epilogue to the epilogue with Harry and Ensign What's-Her-Name on the bridge. And instead of ending strong, the episode sort of dribbles listlessly to a conclusion. They had the ending, and they walked right past it. Warhead was directed by John Kretschmer, who has worked a ton on TV since the mid-1990s, but only directed a handful of Star Treks, 2 episodes of Deep Space Nine and 2 episodes of Voyager, including this one, and was written by Michael Taylor and Kenneth Biller from a story by Brannon Braga. Taylor and Biller were prolific Voyager writers with credits on dozens of episodes between them, and Taylor also worked on Deep Space Nine, where he wrote the teleplay for In the Pale Moonlight and wrote my favorite Star Trek episode ever, The Visitor. And Brannon Braga was a longtime writer and producer for Star Trek going back to TNG, who would go on to co-create Star Trek Enterprise with Rick Berman, and was the showrunner for Voyager at the time this episode was produced. So, some mighty big guns worked on this one. Huh? Big guns? Is that poor taste, given what this episode is about? Or is it just a bad pun? Bad enough to elicit groans and rolled eyes from a few of you? If so, I have completed my mission. Those are my thoughts on Warhead. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. That's it for this batch of AI-related episodes. Next time, we begin a brand new batch of reviews, and this one's gonna carry us through the end of the year. Can you believe 2025 is almost over? Hasn't it felt like about 10 years instead of 1? Anyway, this new batch will be on the theme of family drama, and we're starting it off with a big one from Season 2 of Star Trek The Original Series, Journey to Babel. See you next time for that one. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.